Hello, we are the Loons from Canada. Welcome to episode number 850 of The Skeptic Zone.
Welcome to The Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 850. Thank you. For the 19th of January 2025, Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia, and thank you to those loons from Canada for that little introduction. And you'll hear more about the loons later on in Trove, because this week Trove looks at the old chestnut of creationism, because it's worthwhile looking at successes over the years. And of course, creationism has largely been kicked out of our society in Australia. It will never go altogether, of course, but it's not what it used to be. Joining Kat and Adrienne in the Trove segment is the Secretary of Australian Skeptics, Lara Benham. We start off today's episode with one of the loons, Adrienne Hill. You can count on Adrienne, and Adrienne is going to look at something I didn't know anything about, modern mystery school. Adrienne is joined by guests Faith Newsome and Ramiro Rodriguez to dive into the world of the dazzling domain of the modern mystery school. Never heard of them before? As I said, it's news to me. Find out more as we dive into that strange world with Adrienne Hill. Following that, more UFOs. They will never go away, folks. I think that's it. We have to resign ourselves to the fact that the sky is full of alien spaceships whizzing around, because we've been promised this weekend. You know what? I've been awake for a little while now, and I've been looking at the news services, and the promised disclosure and whistleblower testimony, which is supposed to knock our socks off and hats and everything else, I can't find it. The newspapers here are not leading with this story of alien contact or disclosure or anything else to do with extraterrestrials. It must be part of the conspiracy. Anyway, we'll have a little look at what Ross Coulthart has been saying lately about, UFOs again. Then we have the Australian Skeptics newsletter read by Adrienne Hill. There's a lot of Adrienne Hill on the show this week. Good grief. That's a good thing. The newsletter written by Tim Mendham, read by Adrienne Hill. And then, of course, we have the Trove, which we mentioned before. Now, I mentioned this on the show 2 weeks ago, I think, about the final experiment, these people who went down to the Antarctic to observe the 24-hour sun, which they did. And the band included a group of flat earthers, and it's been quite something, quite the spectacle to see the Flat Earth Society turn on these people, because they did indeed observe a 24-hour sun in the Antarctic, which is impossible on the Flat Earth model. And if you view or if you subscribe to the Professor Dave channel, his latest video was all about how these people are now turning on each other, how the once flat earthers are now copying all the crazy arguments that they themselves once put against other people. And he makes the analogy, this is like the moon landing deniers too. And of course the thing is, this was all predictable. It was completely predictable that if flat earthers went to the Antarctic, they would see a 24-hour sun, because there is one there. They would have to admit it, and their own people would turn on them for doing so. It's hard to get further away from the scientific method than these conspiracy theories. More announcements at the end of the show. That's enough for me at the moment. I'm going to run downstairs and have a glass of champagne. I don't care if it's in the morning here in Australia. It's episode 850, and that's worth celebrating. While I do that, I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone. you can count on Adrienne. With Adrienne Hill.
Hello, everyone. This is Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada. And today I have a couple of special guests. One who has done a few investigations with me before, and I'm so glad that she agreed to help me out with this crazy deep dive. Welcome back, Faith Newsome Rodriguez.
Thank you. Glad to be back, Adrienne.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And we have somebody else who has been a big part of investigating this as well. So introduce yourself.
Hey, hello, everyone. I'm Ramiro Rodriguez.
Ramiro has been a huge part of this investigation as well. So today I'm going to do something that really starts with episode number 826 and 827, where Kat and I talked about access consciousness and the law of attraction type multi-level marketing style wellness group with a worldwide following. And because of my researching this, my recommendations on social media can be kind of interesting. And up popped a video about another group that I had never heard about before. And this really sparked my interest because it seems to have its roots in Canada and, like Access Consciousness, is now active in many countries. And it is called the Modern Mystery School, or MMS, and was originally known as the Rocky Mountain Mystery School. The video I was watching claimed that popular singers Canadian Shawn Mendes and Australian Miley Cyrus had joined this group that some identify as a cult. So we're going to find out more about this mysterious group. So to start with, Faith, can you tell me about the founder?
Oh, goodness gracious. I may butcher his name, but it's Gundi Gundenson. And I believe he's born in 1958. He's a very interesting character. People attribute him to being like this Icelandic version of Steven Seagal because he's very much into martial arts, dojo. That's his primary background. And in fact, a lot of what I was finding about him with the Modern Mystery School or just even occultism, he didn't get involved in that probably for the first 40 years of his life or so. It wasn't until he met his wife.
Oh, and what's his wife's name?
This is his previous wife, Lori Seacrest, and she is an established psychic. They met in the early 90s, like 91, 92 is when they got together. This group was started originally in 97, but the current version of the Modern Mystery School actually was about 2004, 2003.
Right.
So there isn't a lot of information available on the internet. What information they've been able to get is through word of mouth or just interviewing people that have been a part of the Modern Mystery School. And what I learned later on through that is particularly Lori Seacrest, they got divorced in the early 2000s. Prior to meeting her, he moved from Iceland to the United States and found himself in Utah, of all places. I don't know what attracted him there, possibly the Rocky Mountain landscape, subalpine climate, very similar to what you might find in Iceland. And he got involved with Amway.
Aha.
And then he met his wife, Lori, and Lori was a psychic. That seems to be, when you start digging through his history, when he sort of had this revelation or epiphany, getting really involved in the occult, into crystal healing, paganism, basically.
One interesting thing is that his twin brother died 30 minutes after birth, and he claims that his twin brother stayed with him for 10 years, teaching him about the spiritual realm. And at the age of 10, he was given the choice to either move on to the spiritual realm and be reunited with his twin, or to stay here on Earth and help people share all the knowledge that he had learned during those first 10 years.
So did he learn the knowledge from his dead brother?
Yes.
Yes,
He claims that the veil, so to speak, between the two worlds had thinned, and that he was given all of this knowledge and was given that choice to share it with the rest of the world.
Gotcha. It's kind of channeling, but a little twist to it.
A little twist, yeah. He also claims lineage from King Solomon and Hermes. Hermes is well known in these spiritual circles because supposedly Hermes taught Moses all of the knowledge that Moses got. Mystery schools, I guess, are a thing in and of itself. So there's different mystery schools throughout history. You know, like in the Middle Ages, there were mystery schools.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
But they were secret and they taught esoteric knowledge, but it was very secretive. You had to be invited to join. There's not a lot, known about what went in those mystery schools.
There's not a lot of documentation or history that we know of at this point.
I think so, yeah. At least not that I could find. His claim is that he decided to stay here on the physical realm. He decided to create a mystery school that is open for everyone. So it's no longer just this secret society. You still get to learn all of this ancient esoteric knowledge. You don't have to join a secret society. You can pay.
He was actually born in 58, but he did not actually start to talk about this stuff until I believe the Rocky Mountain Mystery School was started in 97. So if he allegedly, with his brother, did all of this stuff for the first 10 years, you have from 68 to 97, a good 30 years of time where he was not actively pursuing or giving this gift of knowledge and information to the world. One would think that if I was beholden with all this information with what the modern mystery school claims now, that he would have been developing the program or a way to share the information with the world instead of waiting 30 years.
Oh, exactly. Or at least when he was an adult to start spreading the word.
Because most of what he was doing before he met his wife and before he left Iceland was the martial arts school. But he had also gotten involved with filming a Viking epic back in 1984, where he became a stunt coordinator. He did all the stunts on this film.
This is an interesting story, I think. So he met two twin guys in Iceland, and they were martial artists, and they are the ones that got him the role into this film, this Viking film that's supposed to be very famous in Iceland.
It's called The Revenge of the Barbarian, Where the Raven Flies, and it won the Berlin Film Festival Award. This is according to his Who's Who page.
Yeah, one of these twins moved to Sweden in the 80s, and he went with them, leaving his first wife back in Iceland. Then he came back to Iceland and he started teaching Kinewasa, which is a martial art that the twins invented. He didn't tell them that he was going to teach this, but he claimed that this martial art was like a 1600-year-old martial art practice.
So the appeal to antiquity going on there.
Appeal to antiquity, yeah. Then later on, he started a bodyguard school to teach people how to become bodyguards. So it seems like there's a lot of things that he's tried throughout the years, just tried to make money.
And then that's when he opened the gym, was allowing children to box without protective gear. Iceland opened up an investigation. That's when he left Iceland and then moved to the United States and met Lori, I believe it's his second wife.
Another wife.
Yeah, some other wife.
Not his current wife. And she was the established psychic, and she offered spiritual services, counseling. This, I think, was around the time, too, that he had been to an Amway seminar, learned how they made money, and then between him and her, they opened up the Rocky Mountain Mystery School.
And this was in 2004?
This was in 97.
Oh, in 97. Okay.
So he and Lori ended up divorcing in the early 2000s.
Okay.
What I could find about that is she had to sign an NDA. Also, she's not allowed to talk about any of their divorce. They basically split off with the students. She kept what was the Rocky Mountain Mystery School, which I think eventually became defunct because there's nothing I can find about it now.
Right.
And he developed the Modern Mystery School and moved to Japan, and ended up taking some of the students that they had with him.
And that leads us to some of the beliefs. Now, what are some of his beliefs that he is trying to share with his followers? Where do you start?
That's really confusing. It's very confusing. And I've watched much of their promotional videos where he has talked about this, about how they run the school. And really what I gather is if you're into any form of paganism, occultism, polytheism, you practice crystal healing, you read tarot, anything to do with metaphysics generally, there's an opening for you to be part of the school.
Do they also incorporate some of the philosophy of the law of attraction?
They do.
And can you describe what the law of attraction is, just for our listeners in case they're not really familiar? Most people are, but there are people like me who didn't know about it until fairly recently.
So it's the spiritual belief that positive thoughts and actions will lead to positive outcomes, and negative thoughts and actions will lead to negative outcomes.
Right.
How they do this is they hold these one-day seminars called life activations, and you pay anywhere from like $80 to $100. I'm not sure what the current price is. And they go through this ceremony to have you awaken that energy that's inside you.
So back in the 90s, when TV shows like The X-Files were very popular, he claimed that he interacted with some aliens that taught him how to activate the 24 strands of DNA that humans have. So he knew from past teachings how to activate the first 22, but the aliens taught him how to activate the last 2 strands of DNA.
And 12 of them are physical and 12 are spiritual. Instead of calling it the DNA activation, they've now moved it over to life activation. They don't really discuss the alien part about it anymore. It's just more so of this is how to activate that energy inside of you. And you get a crystal wand at the end of this, what they do to do the activation. And the school claims you only need 1 life activation. But if you choose to, you can pay to go through the life activation process again at later points in time. And in some instances, you may actually have to pay for that if you leave the school and come back. But we can get into that a little later.
So just to maybe mention a little bit more about the teachings or the beliefs, it feels like it is a mixture of a lot of different spiritual practices. A big one that they use is the Kabbalah, which is like a Jewish mysticism, and they really incorporate it into their progression of courses that you have to take. So they have this diagram of like a Kabbalah, and then they start you at the life activation. Then you can take either the healer path or the ritual master path. And then you have to take like healer course 1, the sacred geometry course. So they create all of these courses, tons of courses that you can take and pay to take that are basically just concepts that already exist out there in spirituality, but they repackage them. It could be anything from Norse mythology to Jewish mysticism to this Hermes guy that taught back in ancient Egypt to aliens.
And to back up just a little bit, once you do the life activation, you go to a step to be called a guide.
Okay.
And that is to guide people through this spiritual experience, because he talks about that you have to figure out what your path is. That's the whole point of modern mystery school, is to give you the tools and the skills and the teachings so that you can figure out what your true purpose is.
Right.
But we're not going to tell you that.
It sounds like Scientology.
It does a little bit, but what is really interesting to me is when I was looking at this, it seems very much like the beginning of the base of this pyramid is the multi-level marketing type model. You become a guide and then you become an initiate. And there's a little over 43,000 of those. And those are the ones that are supposed to be bringing in new recruits.
Okay.
New people to the school. How they explain this is that what they are doing is spreading joy, light, and they want to create world peace. That's the whole object of the modern mystery school.
It's noble.
You're here to learn how to develop your skills through the context of the lessons of King Solomon. And Solomon is actually not spelled like biblical Solomon.
Oh.
It is spelled, I don't know if you're familiar with the athletic company that sells outdoor gear called Solomon. I'm a runner, so I have, my hydration backpack is from them. It is spelled like that company.
Interesting.
Salomon. And they did that so they could copyright it. So nobody else can utilize their material, spread it, share anything because it's the copyrighted name.
Gotcha. On their website, I did notice the number of initiates that they have, but they also have something called healers. There's 478 healers, 324 teachers. What's the difference between each of those things?
I'm not sure about the teachers, but there's 2 main paths. There's the healers and then it's the ritual masters. Maybe that's the teachers. The healers, heal. And then the ritual masters are the warriors.
And I guess they're higher up on the pyramid?
Yes.
Yeah. They believe that demons are trying to open portals throughout the world, and that if you're a ritual master, you have the ability to close these portals. So they're going throughout the world closing portals.
It's a good excuse to travel.
Yeah, excellent excuse, yeah. Back in 2012, Gundi wrote an email to everyone in the organization saying that everyone had to go to Toronto for this conference because something big was going to happen. And if they did not do what they were supposed to do, which was close portals or just channel energy properly, that the demons were going to come through, something along those lines. But, because they did what they were supposed to do, nothing bad happened. They saved all of humanity.
Oh, that was very likely to succeed, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And I think through the law of attraction, when nothing bad happened, they're thinking that I am putting all this positive energy out there, and this obviously should have worked. It obviously did work because nothing bad happened.
Exactly. Well, that is all the time we have for now. But be sure to come back to a future episode to hear the next part of the fascinating information that Faith and Ramiro have dug up about the beliefs of the modern mystery school, which, as you have heard so far, involves channeling his dead twin, aliens, the law of attraction, and multi-level marketing. And it just keeps getting more interesting. So stay tuned. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill from Calgary, Canada.
Hey, Adrienne.
Hi, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yep, I'm stocking up on this imitation maple syrup from Australia.
Imitation? Imitation? No. You need to buy the real thing from Canada.
But I saw the TV commercial and it said that noted pancake eating expert Richard Saunders says it's the best maple syrup money can buy, and 60% of people preferred it in a blind taste test. Everyone knows it's the best.
Oh, come on, Susan. You know better than that. That's the argument from authority.
It is?
Or is it the argument from popularity? It might be another logical fallacy. I'm not sure.
Really? If only we had a way of finding out.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my, it's the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
Yes, that's right. But how did you know who I am?
I listened to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Also, didn't you used to be the tooth fairy?
Oh, yes. I remember you. I'll never forget your left upper lateral incisor. Would you like it back?
No, it's okay. You keep it.
Hey, skeptical fairy godmother angel, what are you doing here in the supermarket?
I've come to tell you that you can find out about 40 different logical fallacies on YouTube in one handy location. Listen to each one to hear an explanation and examples of how they might be used.
Oh.
Just go to tinyurl.com/logicalzone and you'll find all the logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma with handy time codes to get to the exact one you want.
Who is Michelle Bickersma?
Just a friend of mine.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Thank you, skeptical fairy godmother angel. I guess you'll disappear in a puff of smoke and thunder now, eh?
Not quite yet. I have a bit of shopping to do. Susan?
Yes?
Where do I find the Australian maple syrup?
What? No. Come with me, so-called skeptical fairy. This is real maple syrup from Canada. Made with real maple.
Now, by the time you hear this, I think TikTok would be banned in the United States. Nevertheless, over the last month leading up to this time period, TikTok has been abuzz with people saying that disclosure is coming with the UFOs, especially one Ross Coulthart, who won the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award in 2023. And we've mentioned him on various times. I think I need to really start referring to him as the little Ross who cried UFO. He's the man who perpetually says, I have the evidence or have seen, or what if I've been told is true. I've spoken to people who say that. I know of evidence I can't reveal, and it's a broken record. And we wonder how long the media will give him attention, probably forever, simply because it's a very hopeful story in one sense. It's a dramatic story. UFOs are always interesting, despite what some skeptics might hope. The media, by and large, aren't there to grill him for the truth. They just want a story for the next page of the issue or the next 5 minutes of the report, or it doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're reporting the fact that he's saying this and not necessarily caring whether what he says is true or not. Be that as it may, I'll draw your attention to the fact that I wrote a report at some stage before the presidential election. Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, and that was, roughly 8 years ago. People were saying at the time that they knew that before the election, in the handover period, that either the president at the time, Barack Obama, would disclose all the truth about UFOs, or then early on in the presidential term of Hillary Clinton, she would disclose all the truth about UFOs. Oh, that's a broken record, because they're saying now that in the dying days of the Biden administration, the truth will be disclosed, or in the early days of the Trump, or I saw Don Jr.'s got something to do with this. Of course, it just goes to remind us something that I saw President Biden just say the other day in his farewell address, that along the lines of America and the world is being deluged with just fake information, fake news. Well, of course, people will put up anything on TikTok for clicks. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, and UFOs are always good fodder for that sort of thing. Now, this circles back to Ross Coulthart again, who seems to think that people saying things are as good as evidence. And he's been harping on lately about more whistleblowers coming forward. And this is exactly what the story's been for a long time. And it's, to skeptics who have been seeing this for years, it's, well, so what? Where's the evidence? And of course, getting back to my previous point, the evidence is not important. What is important to the media and people like Ross Coulthart is they can keep this going. Here's a recent clip from a TikTok featuring Ross Coulthart.
I can tell you that we're earnestly hoping that through Don Trump Jr. we can basically let the president know that the UAP issue is a priority for many Americans. People have had a gutsful with being gaslit and being told that they're not seeing what they're seeing. They want answers. They genuinely want transparency. And I think we're at a point now where, with these witnesses we've got coming forward this weekend, Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're putting out a story where we've got multiple witnesses who are giving first-hand evidence of a retrieval program of, believe it or not, and I know this is confronting, alien craft. The allegation is that the United States has recovered non-human technology. And I know that's mind-blowing, but for many Americans it will be confronting, but it's real, and it really is real. And I've been talking now for 2+ years to people who work inside this program, and they're really frustrated. They want America to know about this, because they're very excited about these discoveries, and they think it's time the public knew.
Of course, the next few weeks are going to come and go, and people calling themselves whistleblowers will say this, that, and the other. And the world will have other things to worry about. And I think I said this on the last episode, especially about the drones, or maybe a couple of episodes ago. It will end up being a trivia question in about 5 or 6 years at the Skeptics in the Pub trivia night. And the question will be, in what year was the great drone invasion of New Jersey? Options: 2023, 2024, or 2025. And people will scratch their heads and say, oh yeah, I sort of remember that. Was that? Anyway, UFOs are here any day now. They've been coming any day now for many years. Maybe they're here, maybe it's all true, and they're just very well disguised, sitting back eating popcorn.
This is James Randi, and you're listening to The Skeptic Zone.
Happy New Year, everyone. This is Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada, and I'm here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. And the first newsletter of the new year is number 213. Don't forget, you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au and get the full report, complete with all the links, every other week, right into your inbox. But let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. We're back. Here we are in 2025 and looking forward to covering the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, or the start of the second, depending on how you count it. What will it bring? In the US, there are worries about the integrity of the evidence-based medical system, with the possibility of an anti-vaxxer and a promoter of pseudomedicine taking senior roles in the regulation scene. Will that have repercussions in the rest of the world? Will it empower anti-vaxxers and add fuel for vaccine hesitancy? Vaccine numbers are dropping already. We'll have to ask some psychics to see what will happen. At least one has claimed that their very vague pronouncements on fires, or floods, or something, indicate they knew the Los Angeles fires were on the way. Presumably, they didn't tell the authorities, who could have been better prepared. Can you take a civil action against a psychic for withholding essential information? And a note, the flood predicted possibly happened before the prediction was made. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, I will do just that. Paleolithic humans may not have heard of the paleo diet. Quote, while the paleo diet and its proponents may convey helpful messages about eating fresh fruit and vegetables, some of its claims don't stand up to scrutiny, according to the new study, end quote. Is this bad news for Pete Paleo Evans? It seems he was talking nonsense. Quantum University misuses physics to train fake doctors. In a terrific article written by Jonathan Jerry from the McGill Office of Science and Society, a Canadian politician used the title doctor because she graduated from Quantum University, a school that exists in the dual state of being both real and not real. This long but well worth reading article looks at quantum science as much as an, quote, online institution of higher learning, end quote, offering, of course, worthless degrees. Physician peddles pseudoscience and profits off health disinformation. This is a critique of Hemet Oz, Donald Trump's pick to oversee Medicare and Medicaid. UFOs link to economic attention. There is a new study by the Hebrew University in Jerusalem that introduces an innovative measure of public attention based on reports of UFOs, or UAPs, demonstrating a, quote, surprising link between these sightings and economic conditions at multiple levels across the United States, end quote. The findings reveal a new way to study macroeconomic behavior and inform policy, particularly in managing regional economic responses and addressing variations in public attention during periods of economic uncertainty. Or it might just be that during certain times, people look to the skies for a solution. And speaking of UFOs, listening to Joe Rogan predicts belief in extraterrestrial UFOs. A recent study found that consuming certain types of media, such as paranormal documentaries, reality television, Fox News, YouTube, and the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, is associated with a higher likelihood of believing that alien spacecraft are visiting Earth, while watching traditional network news was unrelated to belief in extraterrestrial UFOs. Meaning UFO believers watch programs that support conspiracies and their beliefs. Not exactly surprising. And speaking of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, I recently learned that Michael Marshall and Cecil Cicerello are in the process of producing a new podcast that's cleverly called the No Rogan Experience podcast, and that's no spelled K-N-O-W. And they describe the show as, quote, a show where we actually listen to Joe Rogan to figure out what he and his guests claim, and then to explain where and why it's incorrect, end quote. Something certainly to look forward to. Bigfoot is real, says Jane Goodall. This is a news story about an old interview, approximately 20 years ago, during which primatologist Dr. Jane Goodall endorsed the existence of Bigfoot and company. And this is not the only time she has expressed such views. The December issue of The Skeptic is out. It features a look at the not-so-normal mind. But what is normal? Exploding heads, memory issues, therapists, psychometrics, as well as a history of the Skeptics Challenge, a history of manifesting, dangerous treatments, and much, much more. You can read the article on manifesting your wishes in the preview of the December 2024 issue available on our website. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. You can sign up for a hard copy or digital edition, or both, since the digital is offered free to those who take up the hard copy version. New subscriptions start with the next issue, but you can also order a copy of the most recent one as a treat. Contact the editor if you're not sure if your existing subscription needs renewing. Learn more about our magazine and subscribe now at www.skeptics.com.au. Items of interest. Travel tip. Where to find real-life witchcraft locations across America. You may not be surprised to know that a lot of these are in Salem, Massachusetts, and a lot of the others are in New Orleans. In fact, you could have predicted it if you were a psychic or a witch. Mother claims council house is haunted. A UK mother has told the High Court that the council home she has been transferred to has made her fear for the safety of her 5 young children due to paranormal activity that has caused tables and chairs to move and objects to be flown around. Maybe she just wants a different house. Alien invasion from Portal in Ireland. Ireland could be at the forefront of a future extraterrestrial invasion because there is evidence to suggest a portal used by aliens to enter and exit Earth is located in the Midlands between Athlone and Slane. We always knew Ireland was the center of the universe, and Athlone is pretty much the center of Ireland. The paranormal realm of football fields. Ooh, interesting. You don't often get stories from football betting sites, let alone one from Ukraine. But this one lets you in on where to find ghosts, apparitions, and specters on the playing field. Support the continuation of paranormal events at Old Parramatta Jail. Not exactly as the headline says, since this is a change.org petition to reopen ghost tours of the Heritage Parramatta Jail in Western Sydney. Not actual events, unless you count parties, etc. If you're in favor of ghost tours, they need signatures. Ooh goody, silliest story of the week. Aliens gave Jesus the power to perform miracles. Ah, that explains it. And this is about Uri Geller seeking more attention. He reveals the source of his special powers and suggests Jesus had the same. The most interesting thing here is that Yahoo News controversially refers to him as an illusionist. We assume Uri has written to them to straighten out that slur. Well, that's all for the first newsletter of the year that can be represented by the sum of the cubes from 1 to 9. In other words, 1 to the power 3 plus 2 to the power 3 plus 3 to the power 3 plus 4 to the power 3 plus 5 to the power 3 plus 6 to the power 3 plus 7 to the power 3 plus 8 to the power 3 plus 9 to the power 3. Add that all up and you get 2025. Check it out for yourself. And that fun fact comes to you from Matthew Lee Loftus, otherwise known as the Credible Hulk, and Kat Mac. I will always enjoy a magnificent math fact. So thanks, Matthew and Kat. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill from Calgary, Canada.
Once again to turn to those pages at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, and this week from other sources from around the world, as you'll discover soon. And I thought this week we'd look at a topic of creationism. Why? Because every now and then it does us good. It's it's encouraging to see where skeptical activism has really made a difference over the decades. And I can't think of instantly I can't think of a better example here in Australia than creationism. Now, when the Australian Skeptics started in the early 1980s, creationism was a real problem, especially in the state of Queensland. But there were many people pushing for creationism to be taught in schools. Indeed, it was, as part of the science curriculum. But over the 1980s and the 1990s, people like the Australian Skeptics lobbied hard to have this curtailed, to have it stopped. Now that, coupled with the increasing evidence for the long life of the Earth and paleontology and the increasing number of dinosaurs and other things being found, the increasing amounts of evidence pointing towards the Earth being billions of years old, all culminated, I think, to help largely rid Australia of the scourge of creationism being taught in schools. It's still out there. It's still being taught in religious schools and what have you, and certainly church groups. But it's a shadow, a pathetic, flimsy, weak shadow of what it used to be. I very well remember a Sunday school teacher of mine in the 1970s, or it could have been the early 1980s. I can't remember now for sure, telling me that undoubtedly, within 10 years, evolution would be abandoned as more and more scientists were turning to creationism. So this week we have stories from Australia and Canada. We have, in Canada, of course, those loons. Kat McLeod and Adrienne Hill will be reading some historical archives from there. And in Australia, the Secretary of Australian Skeptics, Lara Benham, and myself will be reporting from the archives here in Australia. But let's start off in Canada.
Hello, this is Kat McLeod from Edmonton, Canada. Today I'm going to dive into creationism in Canadian curriculum. This article was originally published in the Daily Herald Tribune on the 3rd of February, 1975. Creationists aim to build doctrine credibility. The Committee for True Education, an organization formed 2 years ago to promote the teaching in Alberta schools, of a creationist explanation of the origin of life sees a big task ahead. Local spokesman Ed Weens said following the annual CFTE banquet in Grand Prairie Saturday night that even though the committee succeeded a year ago in getting scientific creationism included in the Alberta curriculum, further efforts were needed to make teachers aware of the credibility of the doctrine. Scientific creationism holds that life was originally created in essentially its present form, and that there are scientific facts to back this up. CFTE is sending its bi-monthly newsletter, Dialogue, to all schools and school trustees in the province, and has sponsored debates on creationism at universities in Edmonton, Calgary, and Lethbridge. Mr. Weens said that the committee intends to cooperate with other organizations with similar views and is considering amalgamating with Alberta members of the Bible Science Association to form a new organization. However, no steps have yet been taken in that direction. The committee presently consists of 4 active members: Art Potiker and Ed Weens of Grand Prairie, Dennis Stonehawker of Hythe, and President and Founder Reverend Neil Unruth of Vancouver, formerly of Hythe. The committee also has 210 associate members who receive the committee's publications. More than 150 persons from the Peace Country attended the Saturday banquet in the Alliance Church basement. Ivan Stonehawker of Lacombe, past president of the Alberta Teachers Association, and member of the Bible Science Association, spoke on, quote, "Why I am a creationist," end quote.
Now let's go all the way back to the year 1930 on the 31st of May, and the newspaper in question is the Kangaroo Island Courier, Evolution and the Schools. And I'll read this as it's published here. There are fundamentalists in Australia, as well as in America, people who protest against an elementary knowledge of science being given in the schools, lest it should corrupt the religious beliefs of the scholars. In the Grafton High School under, quote, history first year, end quote, the question was, quote, describe the creation of the earth, end quote, or, quote, describe or show by sketch the stages through which life is believed to have passed through the cell of man, end quote. A local clergyman objected to believers in the Christian religion being taxed to pay the salaries of men and women who are destroying the faith of the children under their care. The Minister of Education wisely replied that there is no dogmatic teaching of the theory of evolution at the school, and pointed out that it was dealt with on broad general lines and explained as being merely the theory held at the present time by a number of people and not necessarily true. Of course, evolution is true, and all the sciences bear testimony to it. Evolution is the process by which life ascends from cosmic dust to its apotheosis in a star, and it is the progression from an acorn to an oak, from childhood to manhood, from self-discovery to self-realization. Everything in the universe is changing, life developing, individuality, and ever reaching upwards. The urge of all the kingdom of nature on this planet is to unfold consciousness, to develop individuality, to evolve men into gods. The truth of evolution is true to every great religionist, as well as to every great scientist. For man himself is a spiritual being apart from his physical body, and attains the splendors of perfection through the process of evolution. We can deduce from the teaching of the Christ and from the world around us, and that is accredited to Advance Australian News Service.
This is Lara Benham, recording in Sydney, Australia. I'm going to read something from the Adelaide Advertiser, dated Wednesday the 23rd of April 1952. School Lessons on Evolution. Letter to the Editor. Sir, According to my son's social study notes, the theory of man's evolution from lower forms of life is taught in schools of the education department, not as a theory, but as a scientific historical fact. Surely this approach to the important study of the origin and history of man outrages the scientific method. Pure science goes no further than heredity and variation. The rest is merely speculation and fantasy. I have taught my children to accept the Bible revelation of specially created kinds. If evolution be true, the Bible becomes a book of legends and children should not be deceived about it. The truth is that the evidence for evolution, which in the 19th century appeared overwhelming, has, in the face of advancing knowledge, progressively weakened. To believe in evolution today is to exercise a faith based on far less evidence than that of any religious faith. To quote Sir Arthur Keith, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it only because the alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. W.R. Nines, Modbury.
And from the Brisbane Courier, dated the 12th of July 1923, Evolution in Schools. And this is a letter to the editor. Sir, will you allow me space to ask a simple question and perhaps sound a note of warning? I teach a class of boys between 9 and 10 years of age in a Sunday school. Last Sunday, after the lesson, one of the boys told me his day school teacher had told him that he had descended from a monkey. And, of course, he could not see how the Bible and the teacher could both be right. Is this the sort of thing taught in our state schools today? If it is, Christian parents and Sunday school teachers should know what children are taught and act accordingly. The excuse is, of course, the study of anatomy. But I know as much anatomy as most state school teachers, and could teach the subject without teaching evolution. When I learnt comparative anatomy, my teacher was an atheist, but he had more sense than to waste time going beyond his subject and teaching very bad Darwinism. Is evolution taught in our schools as part of the schoolwork, or have I dropped on an isolated case of a child, perhaps misunderstanding his teacher? If the former, I should advise Christian parents to protest against their children learning such theories at the expense of the state at the most impressionable age. I am, sir, etc., A. W. Wall, YMCA, July 9.
This is Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada, and I'm going to read an article from 1978 from the Calgary Albertan. And the title is Creation Science Association, Getting the Runaround. And it's written by Eva Reid. Members of the Creation Science Association of Alberta, and just as an aside, they refer to that as CSA going forward. So members of the Creation Science Association of Alberta would appear to be getting the runaround from the provincial government's Department of Education. In February, according to Reverend Neil Unruh, then Director of Extension for CSA, now in Saskatoon, it was expected and promised that a scientific creationism curriculum, actually it says curriculum, supplement would be prepared for science and biology courses this fall. The creationists who are asking that the evolutionists state origins and that the creationists be given an opportunity to also state origins, letting the student decide, claim they have not been given this opportunity. A meeting of the CSA and the Department of Education, Alberta government, was to have been held in September, but is now postponed until December. Hank Kalki, Secretary-Treasurer, CSA based in Edmonton, said in a long-distance interview, "The Department of Education promised 5 years ago to include more books in the new curriculum, but it is just a matter of passing the buck. We went to Peter Lougheed first, and he passed it on to the Minister of Education, who in turn said it was up to the Science Curriculum Department. We hope there will be a decision made by the Policies Board at the December meeting." He pointed out that the Policies Board had issued News Release 58, which stated on any controversial issue such as evolution that alternative explanations must be presented, but this is not being done. Kalki said it was left up to Alberta school boards to implement this policy, and many school boards did attempt to work out plans in their respective schools, but were hindered due to lack of books available. They have been frustrated because they cannot get the resource material and no books are listed. There are scores of books and other material on evolution, but only one, yes, one book on creation. We only ask that scientific evidence be supplied. We are not asking that the Bible be brought into the school system for this purpose, but that evolution present its side of origina. That creationists present their side and then leave this information, or this evidence, with the student. It was back in 1973 that a group known as the Committee for True Education first tackled the government urging equal time with evolutionists. Later that year, the Alberta School Trustees Association issued a resolution encouraging member boards to allow for equal time for the presentation of creation and evolution in the classroom. Creation groups in Alberta have since amalgamated to form the Creative Science Association of Alberta, with Ivan Stonehawker as president. He could not be reached for comment. He is a past president of the Alberta Teachers Association. Besides pressuring the Education Department for curricula changes, the CSA has presented lectures to many teachers' conventions and summer institutes in Scientifica Creationism at Olds College in Olds, Alberta. And that's not far from Calgary. Creationist tours have attracted thousands of Albertans. The CSA publication, in Grand Prairie, Creation Dialogue, has been sent out to Alberta schools for 4 years, and CSA members are in increasing numbers being invited to present creationism to students.
So there we go, with thanks to Lara Benham, Kat McLeod and Adrienne Hill, and look at some of the reports over the decades into creationism and education. And again, it serves us well to remember that skeptical groups do have success. Our efforts can bear fruit. Not the fruit of the tree, maybe. Not the apple. But from time to time, it is good to remember these things. As I said before, creationism in Australia is largely a forgotten relic in the trash bin of bad ideas. But you too can find out about all sorts of forgotten relics, or good things, when you visit online resources like Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, because when you go there, or maybe one of the other references from around the world, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone. Thank you to all those people who have supported The Skeptic Zone all these years. Without you, we would never have reached episode 850. Only 150 episodes to go to the big 1,000. Will we make it? Will we? We hope. Now, getting back to one of our stories in the show about the disclosure of the aliens and all that sort of stuff, apparently we should have footage or evidence of an egg-shaped UFO being retrieved by the Air Force. I've looked around. Maybe it'll come later today. Who knows? An egg-shaped UFO. I think they're confusing things with Mork and Mindy. Yes, that's it. They must have watched an old episode of Mork and Mindy, and they think that aliens arrive here in eggs. Nanu. And thank you to all the reporters over the last, 17 years or 18, 17 years, something like that, who have helped put the show together, who have made the show, really. I'm just up here, the captain of the ship, and it's the engine crew, I think, that really are the stars of the show. Thank you to all my reporters and to those wonderful people like the Skeptical Fairy who make sure that my homework is in order. And lastly, thank you to Penn Jillette. Penn Jillette. I went to see the Penn and Teller show here in Sydney just the other week with the Secretary of Australian Skeptics, Lara Benham, and Penn was gracious enough to give us some time backstage after the show for a chat and a catch-up. Much appreciated. And what a show it was. If you haven't seen Penn and Teller, make it a priority. It's a terrific show full of conjuring and magic and mentalism and all sorts of things. But for this week, from episode 850, this is Richard Saunders signing off.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
This is for the zone.
We're in the zone.
Daryl Cahoon, we're in the zone. We're at Skeptics in the Pub, the first Skeptics in the Pub for 2025. A nice crowd turns up, and we were bending spoons and doing all sorts of things. Lara Benham.
Good evening.
Good evening. And we have a guest at the table, Robert. Hello, Rob.
Hi, I'm Robert.
Hi, Robert. Now, Robert, this is part of the Skeptic Zone where we roll a die. Today it's a virtual D10, 10-sided die. And we have to guess what numbers are going to come up. Lara, we're going to roll it 4 times. What are your 4 guesses?
1, 2,
yes.
3,
yes.
6.
Breaking the pattern there. I'm going to predict 8, 9, 5, and 7. Daryl?
I'm going to go 4, 5. I'm trying to commune with the electrons here. 6, 8.
Interesting choice. Rob?
8, 3, 4, 7.
That's a pretty mixed lineup there. Let's go. Roll number 1.
First roll. 8.
8.
Yay!
Good job, Robert.
Robert and Richard.
Oh, and you. Sorry.
Excellent. Okay, next roll. Here we go. A D10.
Oh my gosh, it's another 8.
Another 8. Oh. 8, but nobody got it. Okay. Next roll. Roll number 3. 9. Well, the first one was the best so far. The fourth roll.
6. Yes, that's me.
So today's winning numbers are 8, 9, and 6. Robert, you got 1, I got 1, and Lara got 1.
That's probably enough for the 100,000.
None. What's the chance of that? I must be psychic.
Better luck next time.
3, 2, 1, countdown. Hello, we are the Loons from Canada. Hello.
Welcome to episode 850
of the Skeptic Zone, the Skeptic Zone, zone. It's beginning to look a lot like the Skeptic Zone.
Oh, you're so loony.
Yes, loony.